Hi everyone, hope this finds you well. Welcome to this month's UK rental market report from Zoopla. So without further ado, let's start heading in, and a lot of stuff that we've been saying over the last sort of 6 to 9 months is now really starting to come to fruition. I think the key to this, and we're going to come on to this in a bit, is what is happening in the city centres, because as a company we primarily advise on city centre investments. We know people have been looking for space, and that the housing stock has been really popular over the last sort of year and a half due to COVID. But we're now starting to see things come back. And we said it's about 6 months ago, eventually things will come back round to city centres, and we're starting to really see it in this report. So look, let's look at some figures first. Well, look, first of all, you've got the annual change in rents, excluding London, is up 5%. So rents are actually increased 5% over the last 12 months, excluding London. The moment you put London into that, it's now minus 3.8%. So London has weighed on sentiment purely because London is a city that is thriving in terms of the job market. And when the job market is going well, everyone wants to rent because they would rather rent than commute. However, when you don't need to live there, or people start to get out, you can get more bang for your buck outside of London, still within 20 minutes, half an hour travel into London. So that's why a lot of people have vacated London. But again, we're going to start to see that come back round over the next sort of 6 to 12 months or so. Importantly as well, what I would say is that if we look at other cities outside London, we're still well up. And in terms of the UK in general, we're 5% up. In terms of this is another key stat: 15 days. So an average let time. So that's the moment that it goes on to Rightmove or Zoopla to actually a tenant getting in there is 15 days. Now, we've seen it as much as 30, 35 days plus during COVID, came down to around about 20 days, and we're now in 15 days. We've recently had some developments complete in Manchester, and they've been extremely quick to let, considering that there was over 400 units that went on at the same time. The majority of those are now let within the last sort of 6 weeks, so it's been extremely quick. So look, let's head down. As we've said, a surge of demand for rental properties in August, especially the cities, and I think that's key. Because trends and fashions only last for so long, but it's the fundamentals that they keep coming back in. And it's always the city centres where people actually rent primarily over the suburbs. We're seeing now a big imbalance between sort of rental demand and supply. This is what has pushed the rental growth in the UK, excluding London, obviously to its highest level since 2008. So we're seeing a huge amount of increase in sort of rental demand, but of course the prices that they're paying as well. Back in positive territory, obviously due to COVID, it suffered slightly, but back in positive territory in places like Manchester, Leeds and Edinburgh. And as I say, it did fall at the start of the year just simply because COVID and people weren't going back to work. But now people are pushing to go back to work. We're starting to see that rental price increase. Another factor as well is what we have to look at is who do you want to rent to? So when we advise on our properties, we have people that some look for houses, some look for apartments. What we typically say is those that are looking for houses, who are you going to rent to? Well, you're probably not going to rent to a young professional per se. You're probably going to be a family, a house with a garden. They're going to be a family that can't afford to buy, hence why they're renting. And what we tend to find is the wear and tear on those properties, especially when you've got kids, the wear and tear on those properties is far higher than what it is in a city centre apartment, where the wear and tear is very low because you've got a city centre professional. They're in, they sleep there. The majority of time they're either at work or they're going out. And what we find with city centre apartments is people want to be back in the hub. A lot of people think that due to COVID, everyone wants to be out of city centres. But the reality is now, especially the young professionals and the youth, they want to be in the city centres because they've had a year or year and a half of lockdowns and being on their own. They now want to be in the mix of it, in the hub of it again, and really start the social side of things again. So that's why we're seeing city centres grow as well. As we sort of come down, as I say, you can see here the UK rental growth outside of London hits a 13-year high. It's a big demand, and that's really key coming from the UK cities. Now, this is key as well. So you've got over the summer, economy starts to open more fully. University students obviously look on the lookout for accommodation. But there is other things as well. For example, leisure. So whether that be sort of theatres, bars, clubs, pubs, coffee shops, all of those kind of things, people want to be in the mix of it and right in the centre of it here. You've got some secondary cities that are doing extremely well. Obviously, you've got Wigan, Mansfield, Hastings, Blackburn, Barnsley, Norwich, all registering growth of 9.4% or more, as you can see here. So again, secondary cities as well are doing fantastically well. And as I mentioned there, so things like as offices go back, bars, restaurants, galleries, theatres, and other attractions, that's really made the city centres a bit of a hub again. Now I've noticed that even with our workforce, what typically happened is during lockdowns they would obviously have to go home, stay home for the weekend if they weren't working. And what we noticed is that typically they would be all congregating at a family member's house, so they weren't on their own. But now things are all opening up again. What we've noticed is they're all flooding back into the city centre. The social life all revolves around the city centre at weekends. And I'm noticing that on a smaller scale in the offices that I'm in, and not just with our company, with others as well. But again, that's going on a bigger scale UK-wide. And you can see here, sort of over the same period, you've got Manchester Local Authority risen by 1.4%, Birmingham up 2.5%, Leeds and Edinburgh also up as well. And we're going to start to see the swing back of the pendulum. As I say, we thought this 6 to 8 months ago that people looking for space would be something that was long term if they were looking to buy, which makes sense, but always short term if you're looking to rent. And we're now starting to see that swing back in the city centre's favour. But overall, we're seeing a quicker tenancy. So we're seeing a far quicker rate of return. The moment we put that on the market, we put property on the market on Friday in centre Manchester, and within 2-3 hours it was let out. We had a holding deposit down, and that's before they've even viewed. So we know things personally are going extremely quick. And you can see by this chart here that the demand far outweighs the amount of stock of homes to let. Now, there's 2 reasons. A lot of people, again, we're starting to see a tightening and a bottleneck of homes to buy. In turn, less and less people can buy those to let them. And again, that is going to have a tightening and a restriction on the actual supply of homes to rent also. And then as we start to head down and we start to move to the actual speed of things, as I mentioned, you were looking at 20 days in July. We had 35 days on average back in the height of COVID. But we're now down to 15 days lets, and I'd actually suggest that in the cities that we're advising on, it's probably a lot quicker than that. We're noticing, as I say, the block of apartments that have come available, 400 units, and although we've let them in 6 weeks, and obviously I know that's more than 15 days, but the reality is that was 400 of them that are pretty much all let. If we put one on there, if they're all let and we put one in there, things like that will go within days, and it certainly wouldn't take 15 days. And then as we head down to the actual charts and where things are happening, well, the 2 best growth cities, Liverpool and Manchester, come in at 5th in terms of Liverpool and 12th in terms of Manchester. But you can see here it's the same old names. There's the Nottingham, Newcastle, Bristol, Sheffield, Liverpool, Belfast. It's the same names that are generating the kind of annual change in rents, and that's going to keep pushing on. And I only expect right the way through to the end of the year, things will be even more of an increase in terms of the growth of the annual rents, as that supply gets really restricted and demand increases. So, of course, anything you want to know, just feel free to call in, speak to any of your brokers. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care.